Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Spooky Japan Podcast. Hoping everyone is doing well today. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Stan Baltrusis. Not per- Baltrusi. Baltrusis.
Vulture says, yeah.
He says people butcher his last name all the time. So,
You butchered his last name.
How are you?
so for our listeners out there who might not be familiar with who you are, how would you introduce yourself? And, where did your journey begin?
So, my name is Sam Baltrusis. You got the name right, which is great. I'm the author of 18 paranormal themed books, including my most recent book called Ghosts of Sleepy Hollow Haunts of the Headless Horseman. I've done several television shows, including Curse of Lizzie Borden. And I'm currently working, so I work at a hotel during the overnight shift to write my books. And then I'm actually been managing Santa Claus. So I'm a little over caffeinated right now.
The Headless Horseman was my favorite story growing up.
Yeah, it was so much fun to write the Ghost of Sleepy Hollow book. I'm based right outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and then my publisher, they asked me to write the book on Sleepy Hollow, like a ghost book on Sleepy Hollow, and so it was kind of a no-brainer for me. So I traveled back and forth to New York City, and then went to Sleepy Hollow, which is right outside of New York City, which is Tarrytown, North Tarrytown area of New York, and it was a blast, like researching all the ghost lore and the stories associated with the Headless Horseman, and also kind of like getting to the truths of so it's a fictional story, obviously, but it's allegedly based on real people, and really getting to know like Washington Irving, who wrote the short story that inspired countless pop culture references of the Headless Horseman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had family that lived in New York, so they took me up to where the author lived. Obviously we visited a Sleepy Hollow town. I saw where he got his inspiration too. So for me, growing up with that being that favorite story, that was like an extremely cool experience then.
Yeah, yeah. So Washington Irving, the Sunnyside, which is it's actually, you're right. It's not even Sleepy Hollow. It was called North Tarrytown back in the 1800s, 1900s, and it recently was renamed Sleepy Hollow. But Sunnyside is where Washington Irving lives. It's right by the Hudson River.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful and majestic. While writing the book, I was able to go there for right on Halloween, which was not this last Halloween, the Halloween before, and spend time there and watch the reenactment of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
That would have been cool to see. I know wasn't it based off of a ghost the ghost of a soldier that roamed that area, and he kind of got the idea from that.
Yeah, that's what the book goes into, like what was the actual inspiration. So with Washington Irving, so he grew up in Manhattan. He was to avoid there was a kind of a tuberculosis, yellow fever spreading throughout Manhattan. So his family sent him over to Tarrytown, and that's where he was exposed to the local legends and lore from the area. When he wrote Legend of Sleepy Hollow, he was not even in New York. He was overseas in Birmingham, England. And so the inspiration, in my opinion, was loosely based on local legend and lore, but I think that Washington Irving was more inspired by the legend and lore overseas. So yes, and there's one line that talks about the Battle of White Plains, where a soldier during the American Revolution was decapitated, and that's where we think that was one of the inspiration, the story behind the Headless Horseman. But truthfully, he wasn't even over here when he wrote the story. But what happened is after it was a huge hit. It was released in 1820, and people started reporting seeing the Headless Horseman after this. So it almost like he created the ghost.
That is a theory that actually happens. That sometimes the cryptids, the reason why they exist is because it started off with a imaginative story. So many people believed it. It kind of willed itself to life. That's what I think what happened to like the Slender Man, for example. Like some little girls made up the story, and I think the only reason why people see the Slender Man is so many people believe in it that it actually kind of manifested into a Slender Man, I guess.
Yeah, that's a big part of this book is going into it's thought form manifestations,
Mhm.
egregores, and there are other thought forms in Sleepy Hollow as well. There's a woman named Holda, and she is just known as Holda the Witch. And there's a whole
Mm.
backstory to Holda that she was a witch in the woods in Tarrytown, North Tarrytown during the American Revolution. The community shunned her because she was a witch.
Mm.
And she tried to, I guess, bring gifts to the locals to win them over, but they didn't like her because they kind of
Mm.
ostracized her. And according to the legend, she was like Xena, the warrior princess, and
Mm.
and she brought her gun. She like when the British came over to during the Battle of White Plains and that during that era, she came with a gun and protecting her land and got shot by the British soldiers. Like there's this whole elaborate backstory.
Mm.
They have a festival dedicated to Hulda the Witch, and they even have a gravestone at the Old Dutch Cemetery for Hulda. But the thing is, Hulda never existed. So there's this whole
Mm.
like story for supporting this woman that never even existed. But I mean, whether people like Hulda, probably, but Hulda as a person actually never. She was a legend that kind of took on a
Mm.
life of its own, and they've had
Mhm.
people. In addition to having festivals and large followings of this woman that never existed, people have reported seeing her ghost as well.
Mm.
It'd be crazy to see.
It's
Yeah,
but kind of sad in a way, you know.
well, I mean, I work and I specialize in Salem, Massachusetts. So there were women and men who were accused and executed
Mm.
for witchcraft. So that is
Mm.
actually true from
Yeah.
that era. But I think with Hulda specifically, I think they wanted a witch and they almost like created a witch
Hmm.
almost.
Yeah.
They wanted a
It's
witch so much back in the day that two dogs, unfortunately, was also executed for being witches, which is crazy to me.
yeah. They
Yeah,
did that in Japan too, you know. So I think it happened all over the world. So yeah.
yeah, and in Salem, so I specialize in Salem, Massachusetts, and you're right. There were two dogs that were accused and executed for witchcraft, which seems crazy. And a lot of things, like having given tours in Salem, a lot of people really are concerned about the dogs. They're like the 20 innocent people that were accused and executed. Uh, they're. I always get questions about the dogs too, and I'm like, yes, I think that they were considered like familiars, and they were
Oh,
supposedly.
okay. I didn't know how that worked out. I remember seeing that they had two dogs that was accused of being witches, but I never knew why or how. And I'm like, that's what did the dog do?
I know. Well,
Yeah, I mean, gee whiz, poor, because, well, was he saying spells or was he doing hocus pocus? Like, really?
I was
Like,
like, what the
dog?
dog barking spells? Like,
yeah,
Like, I can't see that. I can't see a dog conjuring up something to hurt another person or to say, okay, I'm gonna make you suffer. Like, really? He's a dog, okay? I think it was another excuse just to whatever create a a show for everybody, you know,
well,
because I think life would have been really boring without one.
yeah. I mean, in 1692, the animals were a huge part of the Salem witch trials, and
Mm.
so a lot of the people, like the afflicted girls, like Ann Putnam Jr. and Abigail Williams, they had visions of sort of like a spectral pig or a spectral dog. So a lot
Mm.
of the manifestations of witches and the devil
Mm-hmm.
appeared as animals. So probably with a dog, the dogs may have been like have rabies, or
Yeah,
they made.
yeah,
I mean, it was a really cold winter in Salem
yeah.
in 1692, so maybe the dogs were just really hungry and acting erratically. But yeah, animals were a big part of the Salem witch trials, and the fact that they accused and executed two dogs for being witches is insane to me.
Yeah,
I
kind of
know
like it.
technically the Salem that we think of back then didn't actually happen in Salem. Now it happened a town over, I believe.
Yeah, so I'm actually working on a book on that. So I've written two books on Salem, Ghosts of Salem, and I wrote a book called Wicked Salem. The third book is going to be called Ghosts of Salem Village. So 1692, the original, like the ground zero to the initial affliction was in modern day Danvers. So yeah, the original witch hunt was in Danvers, but it was in Peabody as well, and also Topsfield, and it spread throughout the area. In 1692, the area was considered Salem. It was still considered Salem, so Salem Village in Danvers, and then what we know of Salem today was considered Salem Town. So it was Salem in 1692. It just was It's now called Danvers.
Mm.
Someone made a good point once on the show that they were saying that imagine you were one of the 20 people innocently accused, and your spirit still haunts the area, and now people nowadays are dressed up like witches, going
Mm.
to witch museums, basically celebrating being a witch. Like, I wonder how they actually feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, giving tours in Salem, there was a lot of guilt associated with the Salem witch trials. It's almost like you're going to hallowed ground to educate people. And that's kind of my motivation, really, by giving tours was, yes, you can come and enjoy Salem and wear your little witch hats. And we call them weekend witches, people that come in and sort of celebrate Halloween. It's a big deal. But you have to know the history of the land, and the land is
Mhm.
stained with blood. There's a
Yeah.
energy there that you can still feel, and that's what, for me, Sleepy Hollow was so much more fun to focus on, because there's not that guilt that I had writing my
Mhm.
Salem books and doing my
Mhm.
research in Salem, because there was actual bloodshed in Salem, and
Right.
Sleepy Hollow, it's just a story that kind of took on a life of its own. There's not a as I mean, yeah, the American Revolution was definitely bloody, but
Mhm.
compared to Salem, it's still stained. It's stained, and so yeah, are the spirit. And do I really think that the spirits of the victims of the Salem witch trial still haunt the land? Possibly. I do feel that a lot of people kind of like call them up, and like by telling their story and getting back to the idea of thought forms and egregores. Uh,
Mhm.
there are manifestations in Salem that assume the roles of witch trial victims.
Mm.
I
I.
can't remember his name, but I feel like the only reason why that finally came to an end, the Salem witch trials, and it finally got the notice it needed, was they're trying to get a gentleman to admit that he was a witch by pressing a rock on him.
Mhm.
Yep,
And
that's
he died because that boulder the weight got to him. They kept adding more and more like rocks to make him confess. Obviously it didn't work, and that's when it finally, like, the actual court system started taking notice.
yeah,
But who
yeah. So
knows how long it would have went if that didn't happen.
yeah,
Giles
that was
Corey, yes, thank you. I couldn't
that,
remember
that
his
was
name.
Giles
I'm like,
Corey.
what was his name? Yes.
Yeah, so Giles Corey was pressed to death over a 2 day period. So I feel if there is a spirit lingering associated with the Salem witch trials of the
Mhm.
victims, it would be Giles Corey.
Yeah.
Imagine being stripped naked, boards were put on top of him, rocks were put on top of the boards. The magistrate or the sheriff George Corwin, he was standing over him with a cane, and he was saying, like, do you confess, and all Giles Corey allegedly said was more weight, more
More
weight.
weight, yeah.
Yeah, and according to the story, Robert Califf reported on like the scene, and his tongue came out of his mouth, and the sheriff kept putting his tongue back into his mouth, like he was
Yeah.
literally being pressed to death. So
Yeah.
the story is Giles does haunt Salem, but almost like a harbinger. So if you see
Mm,
Giles Corey, something bad's going to happen to either you or to Salem. And
mm,
people say that before he died, he said, "I curse you,"
yeah.
referring to the sheriff George Corwin, and I cursed Salem. And people have reported seeing Giles before fires, and we've actually just had fires in Salem this past season. So did Giles Corey, was he like a harbinger warning people of Salem that a fire is about to happen? And there was a fire. He was spotted by multiple people before a big fire in the early 1900s that destroyed a large chunk of Salem. So he's still very much a part of our local legend.
Mm.
Wasn't the only reason why he was even being accused is they wanted his land, or was that just a little bit of part of it?
That's just a little bit of part of it. That's another thing with people want to know why the Salem witch trials happen, and it's sort of a perfect storm of a lot of different things. So
Mm,
yes, Giles Corey was a landowner. He was also a stubborn old man, and
mm,
so he would, I would say he's probably was not well liked by the locals. And
mm,
his wife, his third wife, Martha Corey, was being brought in, was accused, and she was a pious woman
mm,
who would go to church, and she was accused pretty early on during the witch trials hysteria. Giles came to the court and was asked, is your wife a witch? And he's like, well, she does say her prayers out loud. And it was like, really, today would be considered crazy, but to them back in 1692, it was
mm,
blasphemous that she said her prayers out loud. And so, and then he started being questioned because
mm,
he killed somebody 10 years before the witch trials. So
mm,
they started mentioning that. And something to add to my story, I'm actually related to the Putnam family, who were the bad guys during the Salem witch trials. And Ann Putnam Jr. was the one who, she had a dream about, she's my distant cousin, had a dream about Giles killing the man 10 years before the witch trials, and him coming back and saying that he should be pressed to death. She told her father, Thomas Putnam, who told the magistrates, and that's how they came up with the idea of pressing Giles Corey.
That's crazy, yeah.
yeah.
But it probably would have happened longer if it wasn't for that, though.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, the idea of pressing, a lot of the ones that they did execute, they would hang them, and
Mm,
instead of killing them instantly, like humanely, like putting it tightly around their neck to execute them, they had it loose, especially with Bridget Bishop. And there were reports she was hanging up there for about 20 minutes and like just dangling up in the air. It was horrible. Like they wanted it to be to like a cautionary tale to other
mm.
people that if
Like,
you challenge the status quo, we're gonna make you make you
make you
pay,
suffer,
make you
right?
suffer.
And then see, this is what's gonna happen to you, and you better not do this. It's almost like intimidating others not to do something, but it's almost like torture, the slow death, and she'll see, this is what I can do, and I've got the world in my hand, and I can do whatever I want, and you can't say anything against me or fight against me because you're gonna have the same thing happen to you too. It's it's almost like I don't know, how would you call it?
I mean, it's a witch hunt, really. I mean, like it's sort
Yeah.
of like
Yeah,
anyone that challenge the status quo. And so getting back to your question, was it about his land? That's one of the factors, but there's
mhm,
so many other things too. He may have, well, he actually did kill somebody, but he got out of it. He was able to buy his way out of that
mhm,
original murder that took place. He took a stick and hit his farmhand,
mhm,
like a lot of times, and killed him from a blunt force object. So he
mhm,
had that kind of stain in his past. A lot of the women, like Bridget Bishop, she would fight with her husband a lot, and she was a
mhm,
penny pincher. So the people
mhm,
that were accused kind of were they were not your typical the people that the locals had issue with, and usually it's related to money. Other times it was they were just outspoken. Like Bridget Bishop was very outspoken, and they didn't like a strong-willed woman.
There goes me.
You're like, which?
I think we both would have been hanged back in the day.
Dang. Well.
And even
Hey.
like I was surprised, even because you focused like a lot of the women were accused, but there were men that were accused too. And the guys like Samuel Wardwell, for example, he was accused and executed. He was out of all the 20 that were executed, he actually said he was a witch. He was the only one to say he was guilty because he would tell fortunes. So he was almost like a like a clairvoyant or like a psychic back in the day, but he would predict like women being pregnant. So it was like really minimal psychic abilities, but he did say he did tell fortunes, and then he recanted before he was executed. But still, the people, all the 20 people, except for Giles Corey, didn't say anything. He remained mute during the witch trials, but everybody else said they were innocent.
I think it was just an excuse just to get rid of somebody more than anything else.
I mean, it was for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It was easy
And the
to
most
accuse them of
lamest
witchcraft.
reason, the most dumbest reason that you could even think of. Well, let's accuse this person for being a witch, okay? Yeah, and find the most dumbest, I don't know what you call it, like kangaroo court, just to get rid of somebody because they don't fit in the square box. You know, like you're shoving a round peg in a square box. You fit in there and be like everybody else, just because you were different, right? I think that's me. That's me. That's 100% me. Like I'm like that too.
Well, some of the things that they use to test women and men for witchcraft. One of the things is they would strip them naked and they would look for skin anomalies, like a skin tag. If they had like any like a wart, it would be like, oh, that's the witch's teeth and things like that. It was horrible. So I would be accused too. I mean, especially if I had to strip naked in front of in a tavern in front of people. They're like, what is that? Oh, you're a witch. You have a witch's teeth on your arm.
Or you got a mole. Or you got a fresh. Oh, that's a mark of the devil. You know,
exactly.
Like damn. But if you think about it, there are some places, I think, around the world who still think that way, right? And they haven't changed. And they think if you have the mark of the devil or you have the mark of a witch or whatever, right? If you have if you have some kind of like a birthmark, right? So yeah, they would believe that too. So it's not that far off behind, and there are some places that do still think that way. And yeah, like I think they would still try to get rid of them the most worst way a man can possibly think of. So it hasn't changed. It hasn't disappeared. I think it still exists to this day. And everyone says, well, we're more advanced, and this is the 20th century, and we don't think like that. I said, but things happen, right? And some people don't learn by mistakes, and they still keep on making the same old dumb mistake even to this day. So yeah, I mean,
history definitely repeats itself, and that's why I'm so passionate about the Salem witch trials, especially. And that's why I'm working on my third book now, because I feel like our current political climate is it's repeating. It's going back to old ways. So if you're different in any way, you're being demonized and ostracized. And we saw this during the Salem witch trials. We also saw this during the Holocaust. We saw like this sort of like repeating the same behaviors of demonizing others, and it's different every time.
Mhm.
Holocaust, obviously, if you were Jewish
Mhm.
or different in any way. Now
Yeah.
it's for immigrants and other people, that
Yeah.
trans community, that sort of thing.
You
Currently,
know.
so it's gone for like full circle, unfortunately.
You know. Even nowadays, some religions do not accept clairvoyance, or they don't. If you can see something that everyone else can see, they say, "Oh, like you're gonna go to hell, right?" Or you're not being Christian, like, right? And I said, like, I've been ostracized. Okay, I'm gonna say it because I can see, I can talk to, and I could do, and I can, well, I can basically have a full blown conversation with someone who's dead.
Me too.
And it's yeah. I mean, damn, sometimes you can have a really good conversation. But anyways, putting aside, it's still not accepted, right? So then they would call us a witch for what we do, and they still ostracize us even to this day. So it hasn't changed, right? And they say, well, it's changed because you know because you're this, because you're that. um People do accept. No, they don't. I mean, which what are you dreaming about, right? Are you which cloud are you on, right? Maybe you're smoking too much the bad shit, because we're still being ostracized even to this day, right? And just because you could see things that Joe Blow can't, but mind you, Joe Blow uh worked hard enough, he could see it. So it's not just meant for just certain people, but I think a lot of people do have certain amount of abilities, right? It just depends on how you use them and how you can get in touch with yourself, right? But I think it's still kind of like, oh, that's a no-no, and it's still a no-no.
Yeah, I mean, so I identify, in addition to writing books, I'm also clairvoyant. So when you were talking about talking to the dead, yeah, I also as well. And
Yeah.
I'm actually, for my third book on Salem
Hmm.
Village, I'm actually focusing on the idea that maybe there were some of the afflicted girls may have had abilities,
Oh
and
yeah.
that they were legitimately having paranormal experiences
Oh
during the
yeah.
Salem witch trials, and
Yeah.
use that to accuse and execute innocent people of witchcraft.
Yeah. Well, look at the people who are thrown in insane asylums, right? Because probably they had different abilities, right? And everyone says, "Oh, you're nuts. Oh, you're crazy. Or you're mentally insane. So we're gonna throw you in the insane asylum and hope you rot to hell in there, right? Till you're dead." So yeah, it has it changed much? No. Do they do things different? Yeah, it's they do it different, but it's the same thing as far as I'm concerned. And I think a lot of people were misdiagnosed as being probably sensitive to being crazy, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
And
I mean, definitely. I mean, a lot of I run a group called Spirit Squad, and it's a
hmm
group of empaths, and a lot of us have been ostracized
yeah,
uh, by whether it's our religious community or just
hmm
Yep.
our
Yep.
family, and so what we do as a community is we support each other and
yeah,
say, hey, you're not crazy. This is
yeah,
actually, we're like you, and
yeah,
so it's important to like build a community around it. But
mm,
like growing up with abilities. And I grew up in the panhandle of Florida, and it was
hmm
super conservative, like
yeah,
very conservative, very much like you're going to go to hell.
yeah,
And even my family, my mother is gifted, and so is my sister. But we were
hmm
all kind of in I call it the crystal closet because we
hmm
were just sort of like
yeah,
uh, had abilities, but we couldn't be public with it because
mm,
if you
Yeah.
were, you would have been ostracized or probably said it's from the devil. Uh, and which is something they always say in the South, like that's from the devil.
yeah,
And I still get that. I'm sure you guys get that too. Even talking
yeah.
about like
Oh,
it's
I
evil. Like,
don't tell anybody what I do.
You
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
can't in Japan.
No,
That's why
no.
we started Spooky Japan podcast, as the rest of the world doesn't really know about Japan, and we're also here to say it's not a safe thing to want to admit that you're into in Japan. And
Hmm.
we're hoping eventually someone else in Japan who is into the paranormal, but for the reasons why you said, they can't come out and admit that they're into the paranormal. We're hoping they find us and know that they're not alone, and this is their safe place.
Yeah. And it's really hard because my kids are all sensitives, and my eldest son growing up, he could never speak of what he sees in his school. And if you said something, you'd say, okay, you need to go see the counselor, right?
Hmm.
Or you need help, or you get a letter in the mail, you get a letter brought home with your son saying he needs help, or he needs a psychiatrist, right? So my son could never come out and say anything what he could see. And being a parent at that time, I was not really I came late into my gifts. So he had them right when he was little, and he saw everything. And how do you support a child when, and it was probably harder for him because nobody would believe him, but I think it was harder for a parent because if you can't see it, how could you support your child? I think there's a lot of children out there too who are very gifted, and parents don't know how to, I don't know, how to help them. Or there, I saw one part on Reddit where a young girl can see things, and the parents think that she needs she needs a priest and get and get what do you call it,
Exorcism.
yeah. But I
Yep.
said, no, she don't need an exorcism. She doesn't need an exorcism because their parents think that she's crazy, and they're hardcore Catholics, right? And yeah, I'm Catholic too, but I'm not hardcore. I take it or leave it, right? Oops, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
It's just that every not everyone needs an exorcism. Not, just because you can see things and feel things and doesn't mean that you need an exorcism. But yeah, they think, oh, you're just marked, or you're crazy, or the devil got inside you, right? And it's so sad because there are cases even to this day where people say, "Oh, she's crazy. Oh, she needs an exorcism," which is not really what's needed, right? It's just really, I don't know. It brings tears to my eyes when I see that, or when I feel that, when I hear that, because, yeah,
That's how it was for me growing up, as I grew up as a Baptist minister's daughter. So
yeah,
having any kind of those kind of gifts to them, I was either practicing witchcraft, or I did something, I had a demon attachment, or I was possessed by a demon,
yeah,
to the point where one time they even tried to do an exorcism on me to get rid of the demon. And I was more scared, and I knew I wasn't. I didn't have an attachment. I wasn't
no,
into witchcraft. I wasn't possessed. So
yeah,
I was more scared of what's going to happen when they realize nothing is coming out of me.
yeah,
I'm like, are they going to think they're failing and try harder? That was what my biggest fear was.
mm-hmm,
They're already throwing holy water on me. I just,
mm-hmm.
it was
You should have been
terrifying.
Watch
like,
it burn,
like,
Yeah.
oh,
And
like
look
put a
back,
cross in
looking
your
back at
face,
it now,
burn
I
on your
laugh at it, but
forehead.
then it was terrifying because I didn't know what was going to happen when they're like,
Yeah,
"Man,
yeah,
what happens when they realize this is not working?" And they're going to think it's
yeah,
just they need to try harder, or they can
yeah,
finally going to realize it's not working.
yeah,
But yeah, I had to hide it for that reason, especially at the time, as I tell people, because I know to them, I got accused. I mean, I got accused of being into witchcraft. Then, for you have a gift, you have to be doing something to summon it. I'm like, and the closest thing at the time, because they were obviously strict. The closest thing I knew at the time to witchcraft was the Hocus Pocus movies. And the only
yeah,
reason why I could watch the Hocus Pocus was it was Disney. So technically,
mm,
kind of had that, loop around. Well, it's Disney, so it can't be that bad. I'm like, yeah, I'm clearly not doing the Hocus Pocus stuff.
yeah.
Can't, it's not realistic. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not.
It's like I said, times have not changed. They said it's better, and I said, no, it's not. It's for me. It can be go. It can. You can say it got better, but to me, it kind of like got worse, in a way. Yeah.
Yes and no to that, because like they were
Yeah.
saying, especially religious people. I'm not going to
Yeah.
say it's all religious people doing it or all people who do it are religious, but
Mm,
there are some people because it's the cool thing to do is claim you're clairvoyant.
mm,
We've seen a lot of fakes out there. We've seen also
yeah.
a lot more fake demonologists out there. And I'm
Yeah.
not calling out every demonologist when I say this, because some
No.
people do. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I know there's real demonologists, but I mean, the people who wake up one day, take an online course, get a certificate, and they're like, oh, I'm a demonologist. Those
Or
kind of
like,
people.
or like
And I tell
or
people what's kind of refreshing about Japan is we don't have that.
yeah. Or like say I'm a minister, right? Remember,
But they
Amanda?
were like, yeah. I'm
Like,
like, there is actually, like, there is a whole, and I taken one of those online demonology courses because I joked around about enough. I'm like, I'm actually going to see what they teach. Majority of it is stuff I already knew being in paranormal, which is
mhm,
not even scratching the surface of what you need to know to be an actual demonologist, or
mhm,
it even gives you the training you need to be a demonologist. I'm like, man, this is what worries me. People with these certificates
mhm,
are taking on cases of, you
mhm.
know, what people may or may not be a demon, but they're like, yeah, I'm a demonologist, I can help you. And you just have an online certificate.
I mean, and I'm in New England, so there's a lot of people that are demonologists in this area. I personally feel like that there needs to be a lot of vetting before you get to the point where you can even take on a case. And
Mhm,
I think, in my area, we do have a lot of support for people that want to go into that field.
mhm,
And especially, I mean, I teach Spirit Squad, so I actually have a group of like 50 people that I mentor
mhm,
as clairvoyants and other are able to work with their abilities, but it's a long process, and it's almost like
mhm.
going. It's not like Harry Potter school, but it's like you have to basically work on your abilities, work the muscles, and
Yeah.
and vet your abilities. And I feel like that there's a lack of vetting going on, and
Mhm,
I'm in my book, the book I'm working on now on Salem. I'm going to
mhm,
go into that sort of like maybe they were gifted, but it's sort of like gifted in the sense that they were using their visions to hurt other people, and that's
mhm,
what a lot of people do, like demonologists and even like some psychics that use their abilities to either to make money off of it or to hurt other people. Like, oh,
mhm,
that person's evil. I can see evil around them, and I'm like, you know what, like you have to. Yeah, if you're going to take that role, it's a really you have to be really careful
mhm.
not to become like a witch hunter, like not to be pointing
Yeah.
out people like, oh, this person's bad. I can see it. They have the mark
Yeah.
on them, and
Yeah.
and I growing up, I mean, the reason why I kind of came out of the crystal closet, if you will, is because my niece is also gifted. I wanted to be there for her,
Mhm,
and my sister is too. So it's sort of like supporting my family uh, for something that was a part of who I was. And I was growing up, I was always a sensitive kid, um,
mhm,
and really, you said Baptist. I mean, I was surrounded by Pentecostals and Baptists, and then I was Catholic. My dad was Catholic, so I had both the Baptist
yeah.
Pentecostal side and then the Catholic side too. And both sides did not like who I am,
Mm.
as a
They
person.
still don't like it, even to this day.
I know.
And it's so crazy. What do you have against me? Like, I didn't do anything to you. I didn't. like,
The problem
like,
is a lot of those people that you were talking about, the only reason why they say that, a lot of them will say there's something bad attached to you just to put the fear in you to
yeah.
get money to do some cleansing spell. Usually, because those people come to me and they always say the same thing. Where they're like, "Oh yeah, well I see this attachment on you, and if I don't get rid of it, it's going to kill you, wreak havoc in
Mm,
your life, and it costs like
yeah.
$500, $250 on sale for them
Oh,
to perform this ritual to get rid of it." And I'm like, yeah, don't don't put that fear into people just thinking they have to give you $500 to get rid of absolutely
Yeah.
there.
We, in Salem, there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of regulation now. Because before there was a woman, there were several psychics that set up shop in Salem, and they would do that. They would claim that you had a attachment or had a darkness surrounding you, and
Mm-hmm.
would give you give you something to drink, to like holy water or something to
Mm-hmm.
drink away the
Probably
ghost.
tap water.
Yeah, it's probably just tap water.
Tap water and say, okay, give me $50 or give me, that'll cost you $100, like.
But I mean, the people that I know and the people that I work with, like we don't. There's no money exchange. If they're asking for money to do a removal, that's a problem. You should definitely
it
stay away.
is.
The ones that
it is.
I really feel like that are in it for the right reasons. Like we don't take money. We don't like it's not a money making thing for us. It's a passion for us, really.
Yeah. And I get the same thing. I said, how much do you charge? I said, I don't charge anything. Why should I? I said, and they said, well, you should, like everyone says that everyone is charged. I said, not this one.
They shouldn't anyways, just because.
How much do you charge to clean my house? I said, nothing. And they go, oh, really? Like, are you for real? Yep, I'm real. See? I'm real. And yeah, they're surprised. A lot of people in America are really surprised because they think, well, she's gonna charge us. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm not gonna charge you. And if you want to talk to your dead son, I'll do that for free too.
Because they gone to the wrong people just trying to get money out of them.
And it's not a thing where you're gonna make money. You're not gonna get rich off. And yeah, it's almost like this is my passion. This is my calling, and this is what I do. And it's like this is the way I make my quote unquote living, but I don't get paid. But it's me, and I wouldn't do anything else. I wouldn't change it for anybody else, and I wouldn't live my life any other way except this way, and I love it, and people who love it really do love it.
Then there's the flip side to that, though. Like you'll get people that once you go public with your abilities, then they're like, "Oh, can you give me a free reading?" And I'm like, and sometimes I'll do it, but for me, like everybody's different in what their skill set is. For me personally, I'm a psychometrist, so like I like to go to a location and to read the location for the spirits. Like that's what I like to do. Some people specialize in like galleries. I'm not a gallery person. I don't like doing the gallery and going, "Oh, your grandfather just walked in the room." Like I don't do that. To me, like that's dangerous. Like that's sort of like that's something that the grandfather should. If you're going to say your grandfather walked in the room, you have to be 100% sure that the grandfather walked into the room.
Yeah.
So for me personally, like if you watch me on some of the shows, I'm terrified of my gut. Like I fought it my whole life. It's not something that I wanted. It's just there, and like you said, it's just who I am. And so I fight it, and I also doubt myself. And to me, like the ones that are like super confident, and yes, you got to be confident, but those are the ones that I'm cautious of. The ones that struggle with it, like I I see it in you as well. It's like it's hard to figure out what they're trying to say sometimes. And that to me is the biggest challenge. So I'm not going to charge somebody for that. I'm like, what if I get it wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's also why teams shouldn't be charging either.
That's
When
true.
we find out a lot of paranormal teams charge to go places, because as people say, you cannot guarantee results. And they also, it's not like a little bit they charge. A lot of people tell me they'll charge between $500 is the lowest I heard. Some people told me $1,500 for one team to come out, and I'm just like, that's a lot of money. That they're with that much money, they're pretty much trying to guarantee you that they're going to get results. And you can't, even in most haunted place, none of us can guarantee results.
No.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like even with my students, and yes, I do feel like that in some cases that if you're doing a reading for somebody, you should charge them because that's your time. But for me personally, I don't charge. Like I feel like that's something that if you're truly helping somebody, like you should do it out of the kindness of your heart. What you
Mm,
give is you'll receive.
yeah.
So and I'm also too, and I tell my students this too in Spirit Squad.
Hmm.
It's sort of like as soon as you become like greedy, then you're going to lose your gift. And
Yeah.
I believe that. Like I feel like that it's if I try to seek fame or try to be greedy about a situation, then I'm
Yeah.
going to potentially lose what I have. So
Yeah.
I give as freely as I can, but it's
Hmm.
also I have to protect my energy too because
Yeah.
I do kind of give myself freely to a lot of people.
And you have to watch out because there are some, I don't know. I call I call them vultures who
Like energy
feed,
vampires, yeah.
yeah, who feed on people who have gifts and they want more and more and more, and they don't know
Yeah.
when to stop, and they'll do it till you're dried out or you
Oh
can't do
yeah.
it anymore. So yeah, you just, and another thing I wanted to tell you was that if you see something, it's there, it's true. Never doubt yourself, because it is what it is. And I used to doubt myself a lot, okay,
Oh yeah.
until I came across another person who is a very good friend of mine, who told me, if you saw that, it probably happened there, or that it really was there. So never doubt yourself, because you could see it through your own eyes, and it's there. So that's what I was told. And you got to really listen to yourself too, because you can never second guess yourself. Once you second guess yourself, then you're going to be doing right throughout the whole episode, or so the whole session. So never second guess yourself, which is really good thing that I learned. And you know, I used to say, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Like, and no, you saw it. You're right.
Yeah, I was on a show called or a documentary called The House in Between Two, and they brought me to this location. I didn't know where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a blindfold heading to the
Mm-hmm.
location, and
Mm-hmm.
there was another psychic there. And so I go on the land in this house, and
Mm-hmm.
Steve from Ghost Hunters was there, and I'm like, oh my god, like what am I like? And they wanted me. And they're like, okay, you can't use. So I use. I'm a big dowsing rod person,
Mm-hmm.
and I brought my dowsing rod. So like, well, Sam, you can't use your dowsing rods to communicate with spirit. So I'm like, okay. So I said I started talking to the animals. I'm like, animals, can you validate what I'm picking up? And
Mm-hmm.
the bird starts squawking to
Mm-hmm.
to validate what I was picking up. But what I picked up was that there was a lynching that happened on the property, and to me, like that's huge. Like that's a like, and I was crying because I was like, what if
Mm-hmm.
this is wrong? Like, what if I'm saying this and this is wrong? But I was right though.
Yeah.
And you're right. I have to believe that what I'm seeing is true and
Mm-hmm.
just go with it. But I was so scared that I somehow was messing this up,
Well,
and the birds
also, yeah.
were validating me, and I'm like, birds validate me, and they were like squawking, and I'm like and I still was not sure, and
Mm-hmm.
but I got it right though.
Sometimes you're scared because the truth is pretty nasty,
It's
and
bad.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then you really don't want to believe what you really saw, or
yeah,
you really don't want to believe that this is what happened there, and it makes you sick to your stomach, right? Because you saw something that you didn't like, and you said, "Oh my god," like this. And yeah, I do the same thing. And, like, I could see people who were killed. I could see people who killed them. Another person. I could see people. I usually get children. A lot of children who are killed
yeah,
too, and it's not an easy way to palate or stomach it. You gotta have a really good constitution to be able to see stuff like that. And it's not an easy thing to do. What I'm saying is, when you become a clairvoyant, you could see certain things that you may not want to see or may not like to see. But I mean, you have to step away from being emotional and do the more professional side of yourself, and you're doing this to help someone who needs help, or someone, a family who needs help. And it may not be all pretty. It's kind of disgusting, it's gross, it's horrible, but yeah, it's a part of what we do, right?
yeah.
and to me, it's another job. Uh, yeah, who does this kind of job? Yeah, well, not me. Well, me, I do it. Like, you gotta be. Yeah, I said, yeah, I am kind of. So yeah, I believe that, right? It's a really hard job to do sometimes, but if you see it, you see it. If you say it, you say it. And if it's true, it's true. So I mean, you can't change it, right? You can't help it because it's already dead, and bad things happen to it, but you can't do it. All you could do is probably help it find peace and harmony, and make sure that they can live on in a different world than where they are now, right?
And I find, and this is kind of what my calling or my passion is, by telling their story and telling their story
Yeah,
correctly,
yeah,
they can cross to the light.
yeah.
And so that, like, for me, like, just a lot of times, especially those who have been marginalized, whether
Hmm.
they're people of color or women. I mean, you get a lot
Hmm.
of women who just didn't have a
Hmm.
voice, and they
Hmm.
stick around to tell their story.
Yeah,
And when I tell it correctly, uh,
yeah,
it's almost like I'm giving them, like, they're like, okay, I have my unfinished business is now done. I can now
yeah,
cross over. And
yeah.
so I feel like that's kind of like, that's my gift, is to be able to kind
Hmm.
of tell their story. And I see that with the Salem witch trials. I see that even
Hmm.
with
Yeah,
cases that I deal with,
yeah,
the ones that are often marginalized by the status quo. Like it's
yeah.
my passion to tell their story.
But you know what? I see a lot of that happening with history and certain places and certain, well, memoirs of history, and say that, oh, they're trying to glorify it, but actually it's really not that. Actually, this is what happened there, and it's not pretty, and yeah, you're telling it wrong. Like, tell it right if you're going to tell a story, right?
Yeah,
Write it down properly how exactly happened. You But instead of saying, well, this is how it happened. It's, this is a beautiful place, and this is what the people who live there. They're beautiful people, and blah blah blah. I said, yeah, but you're lying, right? You know, don't lie. That's why I think you writing your books, saying that, coming out and telling the truth about it, and say, hell no, no, this is not it. This is what really happened, and this is what you should learn about, and this is the true fact of history. And history is not always beautiful. It can be just ugly and disgusting too. And telling the truth, and just, if you're gonna talk about it, tell the truth about it. Don't make it like Aesop fable, okay? Just be truthful. And maybe, the spirits who do see what you're doing say, oh, okay, he's telling the truth about it. So yeah, that gives me faith, and that makes me feel better inside. So yeah, so maybe it's good for everybody, and it's good for the place, but may not be so good for the ones who did it. But yeah,
yeah. Well,
you know,
even here, like that, like in New England, there's a lot of Native American massacre. I mean, like,
yeah.
I'm in the area. So there's a King Philip's War is in this area, and
Hmm.
so to me, a lot of the backstory really is that the precursor is Native American massacre and slaughter.
Hmm.
And even in Salem, I mean, a lot of people go, why did the Salem witch trials happen? And
Hmm.
my theory is there's a lot of PTSD related to the battles going on with the Native Americans and the colonists in 1692. So a lot of
Hmm.
the afflicted girls would, in modern day, we would say they have a post-traumatic stress disorder
Hmm.
because they were exhibiting PTSD, uh, and so yeah, I mean, like, even in here in New England, there's a lot of Native American stuff that's been kind of swept under and put in the
Hmm.
closet, and like, we don't want to hear about that. We want to hear about how wonderful
Hmm.
Ben
Just
Franklin
the good
was
stuff. Just
and our
bring out the
founding
good stuff.
fathers. But
Don't tell the ugly stuff, right?
exactly, like the truth,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
truth, the truth is pretty bloody.
Yeah.
There's a
And
lot of truth that schools no
yeah.
longer teach,
Yeah.
which is sad because, I mean, unfortunately, if you're not learning it in school, then you're not really learning it anywhere.
No.
Yeah, and and with me, like even like in my books, like you said, like I really try to focus on the other stuff, like the truth, and and I think that a lot you'll see that the kids, and I even know for me the Salem witch trials, it was very, or even the founding of America was very much like it was like it was George Washington kind of like martyrizing George Washington and
Mm-hmm.
and all the things that happened, but really there was a lot of horrible things that were done to the natives
Mm-hmm.
to take over America. And like the truth that like for me, like I've always been fascinated with wanted to focus on the truth and focusing on what really happened as opposed to what the
Mm-hmm.
history books portray it as.
Yeah, because books only tell you only half the stuff, and like it maybe it could be 70% real, and the rest of it, well, let's put this in. It sounds better than
Our
what
problem
it
is
really
they're
is.
starting to sugarcoat a lot of the
Yeah,
history,
yeah,
especially in America with, and I hate to say it, but especially in America when they took down the Civil War statues, they're not teaching things leading up to it or even,
mm,
slavery that much. They don't really have to now.
mm, mm,
So it's not like they're not really, even if they do teach it, they're teaching like maybe the very basics. It's very sugar coated now.
yeah. Or pretend it's not didn't happen. Oh, we're
Yeah.
not going to talk about it. Oh
Yeah,
no,
I think that we're
try to
to
erase
pretend
everything,
a lot of it didn't
erasing
happen.
history, right? And it's so wrong to do that. And I don't know whoever came up to think about that, but boy, I mean, they must have been smoking the wrong kind of shit. To even, sorry about that, here we go again, but yeah, you know what I mean, right? It's
Oh
just,
yeah. And
yeah,
it's happening now. Like you said, it's still happening. It's still
yep,
like we're seeing that happen now, and I'm like, it's propaganda, the propaganda that's being spewed on like social
yeah,
media, and
yeah.
I'm like, okay, guys, it's happening again. Come
Yeah,
on.
yeah. And you know what? Even on social media, like Amanda could even use the word Sasquatch because she got thrown in Facebook jail for
I
doing that. And I
did.
said,
That was
yeah.
weird.
And I said, what? And I can't say the word suicide because that's against community standards. Like, what the hell are you supposed to tell me? Like, on a live, no, that's not what it really is. It's really committing
It feels
suicide.
weird because
Yeah,
here in Japan, obviously we have the suicide forest.
yeah,
That's what everyone knows it as. And
yeah,
obviously people ask us about it. They'll bring up suicide forest, and I'm like, I have like due to social media because they because I guess Facebook uses AI to pick up certain words. And they hear us use suicide, and they don't
yeah,
hear the context of use. They're also they're just like there's a mark on our podcast because they're like
yeah,
you use the word suicide. We don't, and that's against community standards. So I'm supposed to call it the unaligned forest.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
really?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what's happening. So, like, even like videos that are being pulled off of like YouTube or social media because they're using like suicide forest. And you're right, like we've always called it suicide forest, but it's almost like the political correctness has gone way too far.
Yeah,
Especially with the AI, whatever the things that are the bots that are pulling off
yeah,
content. But you'll see videos that are perfectly fine videos being
yeah,
flagged
yeah.
because of certain words that are used in the headline or even used in the copy.
There's one place where my friend has a paranormal site, and apparently it was with long time ago after World War II. There was a spirit, and it was a place where supposed to be these war criminals were buried. It starts with an N and ends with I, right?
Right.
And it got yanked off of Facebook because it goes against community standards, but it's been shared so many times because there's a dead spirit. It's more paranormal than anything else, and we don't talk about the other stuff. It's just a paranormal picture, right? Just so happens to be in a bad place where bad things happen. So, you know, that's why it got taken off. That's why it got taken off. But it's been shared so many times, like 100 people already shared it already, right? But it's a paranormal picture, right? What the hell's the matter with it? Because it's a friggin' paranormal picture and it's stooped down graveyard, right? And it goes against community standards. So even pictures of paranormal pictures are taken off because of the place or the history of it. Like, we deal with straight paranormal. We don't worry about this or that behind it or whatever happened. Okay, it happened. Okay, you can't change history. You can't glorify. You can't make it better. You can't do anything about it. It is what it is. But this is a paranormal picture, and that's what it is. And yeah, even paranormal pictures are getting taken out because of the history. And so what? It's a picture. Damn it!
It's not
Like,
pretty.
leave it alone. We're only into paranormal. We're not into the other stupid political stuff. That's not important to us. The paranormal part we're really interested in, and what you can see, and if you can see it, and if you can read it, and if you can tell what it is, yeah, it's really interesting in that area. But not the other stuff. Like, I think they're just going a little bit weird. Like, like it is what it is. I guess I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just go. I mean, it's going. My opinion is going too far. Like it's just
Yeah.
like I mean, for me to be able to do what I do,
Mhm.
which is to tell the truth and try as
Mhm.
much as I possibly can, the true
Mhm.
history. If you're gonna flag me for telling the truth, then that's a
Mhm.
problem. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
if I'm using like it's if it's based on this wording, like you
Mhm.
said, suicide forest. Like I can't say suicide forest. That's the unalive forest. So it's and like and for me, it's just frustrating. I can get
Yeah.
around it, but still,
Yeah.
it's just frustrating to be able
It
to
doesn't sound
use
right, right?
the
It sounds like.
wording to
It's
say,
taken
Mhm.
away. It's taken away how
Yeah.
serious a place is. Like when you call it the unalive forest, it doesn't even
Yeah.
sound like that bad of a place.
yeah, yeah.
Like, am I supposed to say, okay, the unalive subway station or the unalive cave? Like,
I've gotten so used to training myself to say unalive for social media that sometimes I accidentally do it in like my real life, not on social media. That people look at me, they're like, "You can say the actual word now." I'm like, I'm just so used to train my brain to like, don't say that. Because
yeah.
you'll get canceled.
Like Tokyo has a lot of unalive places, okay? And yeah, it happens more on my side than her side. And it like, what am I gonna say? The unalive forest, the unalive cave, the unalive train station. Like, really? Like, okay, but this still doesn't make sense to me because I know the other way around, right? Because even in Japanese, you would call it a suicide place, right?
Yeah, I mean
You would.
we're dealing with that here too. I mean it goes both ways. I mean, for me, it's great that some words are not used
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like that they're derogatory. I don't want to
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
like
yeah,
derogatory words
yeah,
used on social media.
yeah.
But then these other words that are more informational words, like
Mm-hmm.
so it goes. There's goes both ways. But for me as an author, I have to kind
Mm-hmm.
of find a middle ground to be able to tell the stories and tell the stories correctly and
Mm-hmm.
to navigate through all the political correctness or
Yeah.
or the other side, the hate. And another thing too is like a lot of what I focus on are situations where people are marginalized for challenging the status quo. So whether
Mm-hmm.
you're an outspoken woman or
Mm-hmm.
someone who has been called a witch and executed for being a witch, like those are the people that I'm gonna give them a voice and give them a
Yep.
chance. But if my story's being censored for telling that story, then that's a problem, and that,
Yeah.
like I
We're
can't
gonna have a
effectively tell
big
this
problem
story.
with that one, right? Yeah. It's a big problem with that one if you're gonna start pointing fingers at everybody else for because you're telling the truth because you don't want that to come out. Oh no, you should be talking about that because that's not the good part. And I said, yeah, there is no good part, right? That's
No.
all. No, in fact, it's the ugly part, right? And you don't want to talk about the ugly. No, 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 no. You should be talking about that ugly part because that doesn't show the true part of it. Well, then what is the true part of it? Okay, you tell me what it is. Say it in words right now. Give me a paragraph. Tell me what the true part of it. Well, yeah, they can't think of anything, right? So yeah, it is what it is, and you can't change it. And yeah, I mean, might as well tell because I bet you a lot of young people don't know, and we're here to educate them. Like in Japan now, um, a lot of urban legends are only told by the older people, and
Mm,
they won't tell you unless you ask them, and they'll sit down and they'll tell you about it, right? But I mean, younger people really don't know anything because the the baby boomers are really they're interested, but they're really not like whatever, right? Like they're too busy with their own thing.
It's
So
not that. I've talked to a lot of young people admit the reason why they don't believe in any of the myths or urban legends or ghosts is because majority of the videos they see is fake.
yeah,
So they
mm.
that
even
too.
said it. So if the majority of stuff that we are seeing is fake, why should I believe that there's anything out there that is real?
That's true.
And a lot of times they'll say, if I can't see it, if I can't feel it, if I can't touch it, if I can't talk to it, it can't be real.
And I mean, even same over here. Like when it comes to all the proliferation of the like
Mm,
YouTube videos, like all the
mm,
investigation shows on YouTube, and a lot of
mm,
it, I mean, from my perspective, looks fake to me.
yeah.
And so what happens is a lot of the kids are watching the just the YouTube videos and
Mm-hmm.
don't have never been on a paranormal investigation,
No,
so they think
no.
it's like a show. So when they actually go onto a paranormal investigation, they think it's going to be like Sam and Colby,
Yeah,
or like Ghost Adventures, and it's
right.
not. It's actually kind of
No.
boring sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it can be very frightening too.
It
Depends on
can be,
which.
yeah,
Not
yeah.
You know.
well. The problem is, it's not when you go to those. I've been to those public ghost events, and it's one of those things where I have mixed emotions just because from someone who has been on one, who has some paranormal investigation. I mean, I do agree. If you want to be in it before you decide to buy all this equipment or really whatever, get into it. I do agree that you should go to a public investigation of people who already have equipment to see if you like it. The problem is from one who's already done it before, who's gone there
Hmm.
because like, yes, I would love to see this location. This is the location I want to go at. So it makes it more affordable when I can join one of those groups. But the
Hmm.
problem is for me is majority of the ones I've been on, we've ended early because it's been all people who they thought the paranormal investigation was going to be like Sam and Colby, and then once
Mm.
we actually started doing like after the tour, majority of them ended before the first hour, just because everyone else was bored. Like this is
Yeah.
Yeah.
not what I expected it's going to be. So they got bored, and the owner's like, "Well, everyone else wants to quit, so I guess we're going to end it early."
Mm.
So I just wasted my money because you're also not getting a refund if
No.
everyone else decides I don't want to be here and they end early. But it
Yeah.
sucks for like when you've actually done it, you actually know what you're getting into, and
Hmm.
it ends early because that's what everyone assumes paranormal investigation is, and they assume they're gonna go in there and start yelling in a room and things can get thrown at them. And I'm like, that's not realistic. They realize they're sitting around waiting for a response. They're like, this is not what I intended. There is at least one location that admits they do public investigations when they book with people. They say before you actually book this, hey, we want you to know that you've never done this before. It's not like the TV shows.
Hmm.
Don't go in there with that expectation. I'm like, at least you're doing that because that's everyone's expectations going in for the first time.
I think that that's healthy. I really do. And the ones I tend to go to myself are like historic locations, like
Hmm.
where um like we're really going, there are history levers going. So for me, it's like more like the historic locations that I'm drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been in investigations. I've actually led investigations where people have left early because it wasn't like Sam and
Yeah.
Colby, you know.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it's good to have the disclaimer, like say like, hey, you know, like the truth is it's not going to be like that, you know.
Yeah.
Or
And
you
you're
know,
gonna be.
or like talk, like really like look at the like with the younger generation, like guys,
Mhm.
like this is not how paranormal investigating is.
No.
Yes.
No.
And like you need to like take it a step further and go beyond that.
Mm. And you have to watch your energy too. If you have a lot of baggage going in there, you're gonna be a lot of trouble. So yeah, it's and also in Japan, if you have medical issues, you gotta watch that too because they're gonna go after that too.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they're
Well, I
really.
mean, same here. If they see like the spirits, especially, I mean, I was just at a location last week, and there was, it was so active. Like sometimes you'll go and there's like nothing will happen, but
Hmm.
because it's about to close up, it's called the Oliver House in
Hmm.
Middleborough, Massachusetts, and it was like insane. Like we heard like a cat meow. And like when I say insane for me, like hearing a
Yeah.
cat and catching it on EVP is kind of a big deal for me. Um,
Yeah.
and then we did like an honoring of the land in the back because there's a
Hmm.
lot of Native American backstory to the land.
Hmm.
And there was a feather that landed on my bag, like out of the blue. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So
Wow.
things like that
Did
is
you
what
keep
I
it?
love, but it's not super exciting. You know, it's just sort of like a feather on your bag, you know, kind of thing.
Did you keep it? You're
Yeah, you know
supposed
what?
to
I
keep it.
can't find it, and I brought it in my bag, and I showed up my everybody in the room, and I went back, and apparently I left it there. So it was like they gave me an offering, and I lost my feather. So I have to still look for it, but yeah, they did. It was huge. It was like a big feather.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting. That's kind of cool too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the stuff that happens on my investigations, like
Yeah.
the getting possessed, or like no, like the whole drama. Like that's not. I don't like those kind of
No,
investigations.
that never happens to me. I used to get told to blank off. I said,
Yeah, I
"Yeah,
mean
I know. I
that's
heard that
that's the
one."
worst case scenario is
Yeah.
majority of the time.
Yeah, like, I never get told to leave. I always get told to, and I said, ah, "Okay, I've heard that one before. Yeah, you're gonna have to come up with something better to say to me instead of saying that." And yeah, it's it. The, do you find that a lot of certain places have guardians
Yeah,
of the dead,
and
and
that's a good. Yeah, I definitely do.
they don't allow you to speak to the spirits because the guardians are doing this to spirits, and it's really, you have to kind of like work with it.
Well, yeah. So at the Oliver House, there was a situation. There were two. So the house is changing. It's been investigated for the past couple of years, and it's now going to become an office space. This historic building. So there were spirits. Some of the spirits were like desperate to cross over. Like
Mhm.
they wanted me to cross them over, or wanted our group to cross them over. There were two little kids that we were connecting with, and there was a woman, like a nanny, like a protector spirit, almost like protecting the children from
Mhm.
crossing over. So yeah, I have encountered that, to the point like the men especially, and you'll see this a lot. The men trying to quiet the women. So there's like a
Yeah.
male spirit saying like, no, don't talk, don't talk. And like the
Yeah.
women are trying to tell their stories. So my goal is to kind of push the guy to the side so I can talk to
Mhm.
the women and the
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
And the guys are always like the ones that kind of control, like
Mhm.
the mansplain in the afterlife.
Yeah.
So yes, but I also have to be careful. Or is it just misogyny, like guys trying to control
Mhm.
the women in the afterlife?
Or
Yeah.
they don't want them to tell the story of what really happened to them, so
Yeah.
they're saying hushing it up, right? Saying, "No, you can't talk about it. No, you can't tell anybody, and don't you dare tell anybody." It's almost like that.
You
Like,
you get that a lot. Like the women start to talk, and then the
mhm,
men are like shh, like are yelling at them for talking. You get that. I
yeah,
get that a lot actually.
yeah. I get that too. I even get a fight with
Yeah.
spirits, and I said, like I'm going like this. Okay, guys, can you fight some other time? Like I'm here. My time's kind of precious. I'm here to talk to you, not to hear you guys fight. You know, and it's like a downright argument. And they go, really? You know,
We, I
sometimes.
I use the Estes method a lot, which is where you have noise cancellation earphones and the blindfold. And when you
Mm-hmm,
have like a dual Estes, you'll have like a male or like you'll have people like sometimes you'll have like dueling Estes. So there was one situation I was in the Hinsdale House in New York, and we were doing the a double Estes session, and I was kind of channeling the angry male guy, male
mm-hmm,
spirit, and then my friend Sarah was channeling the female of the house, and we were
mm-hmm.
like literally fighting, like we were like yelling at each other, and the guy was saying like really derogatory things toward my friend
Right.
Sarah, who was channeling the female spirit. So you'll see that too, even when when we're connecting with spirits, and it's so gross. Like as someone that like I can channel actually, and if you have someone that's a little bit more like an aggressive male energy, it's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
gross feeling. Like it's a really I don't like that feeling when you're
Yeah.
connecting with especially when they're like saying derogatory things towards other people.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. I, I kind of like just ignore it. Like, okay. You know,
All
I
right, old
heard you.
man, get to the
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah. Back there, shoo shoo. You know.
Get back over there, old man.
It also depends on where you are, especially with those
Yeah.
guys. I mean, I know a
Yeah.
lot of people say they'll go to old Masonic lodges, and there'll be obviously old members there still haunt the place, and whoever is higher spirit wise that was a
Mhm.
member, whatever rank it was higher, usually will prevent people from talking to any women that go in there because that
Mhm.
it wasn't Masonic lodges were men only. So they
Yeah.
see
Mhm.
a woman walk in and they're like, no, don't talk to her. This is not her place.
Yeah.
And they say usually the woman will walk away, and that's when finally they're like, okay, you can speak to the men.
Yeah, we have that a lot also on like ships. Like we have a USS Salem in Massachusetts. Like, and I spent a lot of time on the USS Salem, and like women weren't supposed to be on the ship. So if a woman
Mhm.
walks on the ship, they will even like female investigators. They like um there's been some issues with women even coming on the ship. And trying to get
Mhm.
other locations where even like brothels. Like I've
Mhm.
investigated a lot of brothels, and it's almost like there's a male energy like
Mhm.
protecting the women, and the women
Mhm.
have stories to tell. Like they're like, hey, I want to tell my story. And there's
Mhm.
like the Shanley Hotel, for example, it was a brothel, and
Mhm.
there's a male energy that sort of like blocks the women from talking.
Mhm. There's a lot of places here like that where I can go, but I can't go with my husband. Or if we go together as a couple, something really icky happens to either one of us, like more to him than me.
Yeah,
So yeah, you gotta be very careful who you walk in with, and you gotta make sure you have your distance yourself when you're walking together, even as a friend. You know,
yeah.
you can't go arm in arm together as a friend and say, you're my buddy, and let's go together. And because the spirits will say, nope, not gonna have this on my watch. You know.
They're like, I want her alone. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, well, kind of. I mean, I've had it where even in Salem, I have a stalker in Salem, like a ghost stalker, and
Mm.
I've had friends that, like my female friends, like, hey Sam, I want you to give me a tour of Salem because I stopped giving tours in Salem because what happened is my friend Dana, she got bit. She got bit by something unseen, and
Oh.
and then my other friend Sam, I was giving her a tour of Salem, and there's like a rock came out of the sky and almost hit her in the head. So I I have to be really careful, especially in Salem, about people I'm with because the some of the darker energies, the aggressive energies, will go after my friends.
Yeah.
It
Because
might be that you reminded them of an old
yeah.
lover. They see you with another woman, and they're like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. And that's when they get mad at the other woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they want to attack them, or I mean, or it's just with another person, really. Like they want
Yeah.
me to myself, and a part of me feels like, especially with the stalker, it's like he wears a hat. The people say that, like, is it the Hat Man? And I don't think it's the Hat Man. I think it's just a man with a hat. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but he never hurts me. He hurts everybody around me, though,
Yeah.
and I have to be
But
really careful.
but also remember you told us your history of your family, right? Your
Yeah,
family tree.
yeah,
So I'm gonna say one thing because this is the truth. The dead know everything.
yeah,
They see everything. They know who you came from, what your life was, what your family tree was, and they see everything. So you can't hide anything from the dead, right?
yeah.
So they see everything, and uh, that's one thing that my mother taught me. And you can't say no, this is not true, but because it is true, and the dead will find out, and they know everything, even if you don't want to tell them. They just know everything, and you can't pull the wool over the dead person's eyes, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I actually think that this person, my stalker, may be a family member or
Yeah.
tied to a family member.
Yeah.
I will say that when I go back to Salem, they always want me to go back. They're like we want Sam to go back. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but like when I gave my tours, like they were really like passionate tours. Like people were crying on my tours because it was
Mm-hmm.
just so emotional. But what was happening is this thing was feeding off my energy.
Right.
It was almost like an energy vampire,
Yeah.
and so the more emotion that I gave it, the stronger
Mm-hmm.
it became.
Yeah.
So a part of me feels like maybe it's a family member, or maybe it's a thought form, or something like that, like an
Mm-hmm.
energy vampire.
Yeah, because it does know you for sure,
Yeah,
and it does know who you are. It can smell you up like a dog. It just knows, and
and it definitely does just know. And it knows when I'm back too, which is why
yeah.
I don't live in Salem. I have to. I go only in the daytime, and like I don't
Mm,
go at night.
yeah.
Yeah.
There are times when I say, "Yeah, I'm not going to do this at nighttime. Let's do it during the day one time." And they said, "Well, it's right. They're not going to be out during the day." Are you kidding? They don't care whether it's day or night. They'll be out whenever they want to be out, right?
I know that is, and I've had experiences in the daytime. I've actually had more experiences in the daytime than I did at nighttime.
Hmm. Yeah.
But at least I can see them. I can see them in the daytime. The nighttime, it's just and also too Salem. Like during October, Salem is super busy. Like, and it's busy throughout most of the year. But from like now, like November until March, Salem is a ghost town. So that's when I've had my most experiences when
Well,
when
that's
it's
when I'm
dead.
gonna go.
Yeah. Because I think this another person's coming. Okay, we're not gonna be out. We're just gonna go and have a cup of coffee someplace else and let them roam around, and yeah, they're not gonna
Well,
be around.
especially in October, there's too many
Yeah.
people for.
Yeah. And it gets too noisy, and I think they just don't like it when it gets too noisy. Spirits, they just don't like that kind of feeling.
Yeah, people ask me like about the paranormal experience. They come in October expecting to have a paranormal experience. I'm like, you're not going to have a paranormal experience in
No.
October because there's
Mm.
thousands, up to a million people gathered in this small area over a month long period. Go during the off season. Like that's
Yeah.
when I've had my most. There's I have way more paranormal experiences during the off season in Salem than I have during October.
Well, think about it. If you're a spirit, would you want to be around people with so much people in October? No,
No,
I think I'd want to go. I'm gonna take a vacation.
Well, the
You
problem
know.
with that many people is even if you do have a paranormal experience, everything can be debunked because there's too many
Yeah.
what if factors. Like, let's say you do record a voice. How
Yeah.
do I know that's just not someone else talking?
yeah, that is true. Like this contamination, yeah, from
And,
Yeah.
and you'll see a lot, especially like when I first started giving tours in Salem, we
mhm,
had investigation tours. So people would
mhm,
bring we would bring equipment like on our investigation. And
Mhm.
truthfully, you can't really investigate in Salem because you're right. There's so much contamination going on,
Yeah,
especially during October.
yeah, and I think people are so fascinated with going during Halloween that they forget the real reason why you're there, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like what we talked about earlier, isn't it weird? Like everybody dressed up as witches
Yeah,
when 20 innocent people were accused and executed for witchcraft in
yeah.
Salem. It's almost like there's a lot of guilt for me still
Mm,
there, and it still is my passion to tell the truth and tell the stories of the innocent victims. But a lot of
yeah.
people don't want to hear that. They want to be scared. They
Oh,
want they want something else. They want it to be like Hocus Pocus, and I'm like, it's
yeah.
not like Hocus Pocus.
No, it is. It's far from it, to tell the truth, right? It's far
I
from
feel
it.
bad for the people who own the Hocus Pocus house because they had to
Yeah,
put up a sign because they said everyone kept knocking on their door all the time, wanting to come in and take pictures. So they even had to put a sign out that says, absolutely do not knock on the door. Do not even walk on property," because people would also be walking up to the house, taking pictures. It'd just be weird. People would be on your porch taking pictures. You're like, it's a residential home.
yeah.
Mm,
At first, people were like the family that lived there. They were really like, "Oh, sure, this is where." Like, and then it started becoming a phenomenon, and now
mm,
Yeah.
people are like literally like knocking on their door, and they're like, God, we've already told our story 100 times." They just they live there. I
mm,
will say instead of the Hocus Pocus house, go to the Ropes Mansion, which is
mm.
is open to the public, and that's where what was it? Was it Danny? What was the girlfriend's name? I forget her name in Hocus Pocus.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, there is that house too.
The Ropes Mansion. Also, the town hall. That's where the dance sequence was filmed, and you can go there too. So I would say instead of going to Max's house, like the one that everyone goes to, that's actually a home. People live there. Go to
Mm.
the Ropes Mansion. Go to town hall, and there's even cemeteries you can go to that were featured in the film as well.
Mhm. Um, do you think the people who live there know that their place is haunted, or
It's not. It No, that's where the movie was filmed. It's not haunted
no?
because the
Okay.
family's never had any experience. The only reason why people visit it is because so people can say they saw the Hocus
Mm.
Pocus movie.
Yeah,
No.
but I will say I mean pretty much everywhere in Salem is haunted, so
Yeah,
I would probably guess that it probably is haunted.
yeah, yeah. Exactly.
So guys, I have to head out. I actually need to go to bed because it's like 11:30 here. And
Okay. Well, thank you
Okay.
so much for joining us. We
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for joining us. Yeah,
thank you
it
so
was a
much.
lot
It
of
was
fun.
a lovely chat, and I support. I really I've enjoyed watching your podcast. So
Oh, thank you.
it's been
Thank
really
you.
awesome being on it.
Well, you have to come back.
Oh
You'll come
yeah, of
back for
course.
part two.
I would
Yeah,
love
yeah.
it.
We can giggle more. We can have a lot more fun.
I know.
We'll come back with more Salem facts. We
Yeah,
can
Yeah.
Salem
move.
stuff, and well, it'll be like Hocus Pocus Part Two.
Oh, that'd be great. I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you
Oh,
very much
Thank
for
awesome,
you. And
guys.
joining
everyone
us.
else,
Have a wonderful night.
thanks you too.
Thank
And
you.
everyone else, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.